So in week 4 in CIT82 Intro to Web Development, we're going to continue our HTML adventure we've been on just to introduce HTML and CSS through doing 5 and 6 and 7 and 8. And then next week we move on to Bootstrap. Okay, so I really debate every semester whether I'm going to continue using Bootstrap, but every time I research it, it's still very relevant. But it's the idea of using a built-in CSS framework to create websites fairly quickly, because what you've gotten in this class is just an introduction to HTML and CSS. Hopefully you're all going on to CIT85, just that focuses on HTML and CSS. And this coming fall 2025 semester, in the back 9 is Rick Gomez, who has actually been the lead developer for the AI review product that we've been using. Okay, so in this week, so I just kind of rolled forward just to look at that. Then you'll choose a template. And I know I've gone over some of this already, right? But just to tell you and reiterate that, this is a 9-week course, 9-week 3-unit, which means 18 weeks normally in 3 units is now in 9. So staying up to date, way important. Getting caught up, way important. Reaching out for help, way important. Okay, so in this week 4, I looked at the write-up I had from prior semesters. I decided to record a new video because there's been some things that, especially with what we're going to do for the grading part, but one thing I wanted to go over was in recording the parts of HTML and CSS, there's always so much content to try to fit into just a short introduction. There's just things you'd leave out. And one of the things was values and units, right? We talked about in a little bit of that about, pixel sizes. But in this case, we really only looked at the idea of absolute units, right? So there is something alternatively that is very popular called relative. So you can set things relative to a particular div or a base. Think about your HTML being a hierarchy, right? And its parent unit and its parent unit all the way back to the base. But in this case, relative is very, very common because it's just more flexible, and responsive design is something we all need to be doing. So I gave a link this week just to check it out. And the other thing, oops, sorry, my nose itches, is that, so I think that's where you're going to definitely get that in HTML and CSS, but it doesn't hurt to get an introduction here. And the other thing I didn't really talk about was images and how to handle them, right? But so I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to use this discussion here to talk about that, because we've been doing images already. Our print screens and our embedding, right, is the way we've been handling images in here. So, but in this case, and then also I'm going to do this in this video, is actually talk a little bit about images and creating them, because today we have so many new choices for how to create our images using AI, which some might see, and I know I've heard varying from students when I ask them this. Some people have people are on the spectrum of opinion about this, and I understand all of it. At least I sympathize with it. I think it's a great tool, but I also think there's definitely something lost in having your own creativity to do images, but this class is not intended to cover that. Now, the other thing I did note here is that on the Thursday night item, I'm just going to actually go back to this. And the other thing is that this actually coming, the normal due date on Monday, is actually a holiday. I found out today. I forgot to have it, so I actually moved everything. And this is typical in this class, is if it falls on a Monday, I will move to the next day because I don't have things due on a holiday. But the last item on Thursday I forgot to cover in that video was really one of my most fun assignments, because it is a little old school, but it's something that for students studying web, I think it's just like one of those essential text. In this case, it's a video that went very viral. So definitely check it out. Definitely, the machine is using us. We could think about that in the context of this. You can look at the history of this, but check this video out. And then, as I say in here, reply with two terms you want to know about, right? And then, write your understanding in your own words. This is just so important, because this is where, we don't want the machine to think for us or to write for us. Okay, so now, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to, as part of your reply, because in addition to the reply to the question I'm about to ask you, we'll also embed some images, which I will talk about in a minute. So many of you are already benefiting from this, but there's a real benefit to working ahead. Is I grade every morning. Now, like this morning, I'm running a little bit later. It's like almost 10 o'clock, and I'm just sitting down to grade because I went for a long ride this morning. So, but most of the mornings I start before now. So the benefit of working ahead is that if you have your work submitted by the time I review it, and I review it the morning before it's due, like I am not somebody who's up late. I'm not even, by the time I get to 4 or 5, I'm done. I have my own family time that I set aside for that. So just know, you want my review, make sure it's there the morning before, which there has been a group of you doing very well. Okay, so do you know the benefits, right? So that's a question. Do you understand the benefit of working ahead? And that's the answer part of the grading. My nose is itching so bad. Okay, I'm going to try to drop my video so you don't have to see me do this. Okay, now what we're going to do here is there's this, you could find other images royalty free if you wanted to. You don't have to absolutely use Gen AI, but if you want to, Gen AI tools are all over the place. I'd used Bing before, and that was fine. But for this assignment today, I created one with Gemini, because the Gemini model just came out, was updated. That does an amazing job with images. So part of this was I just went and I did a prompt. So I did image. Now, I don't know, honestly, I do pay for Gemini, but I believe even just having a Google account, you get a certain level access to this. But part of this is just the prompt, and I didn't spend a lot of time on it because this is actually honestly what my morning was. And that's what I want you to do, is create images that reflect your day, right? So that represent your life as it is today. And this was true for me. like true for me. I was up riding my bike. I did a 7-mile to the gym, worked out 7-mile home, and it was great. It was beautiful. I loved it. And so in this case, I told it, early morning, riding my bike to the gym, having fun, beautiful day. So that's what it created. And I was like, yeah, actually, that's pretty right on. There's the gym over there. That's not what the gym I went to looked like, but it was. And so then I get the ability to download that file. Now, part of what I want you to do, because this is really talking about images, is like resize it. And some of you, I've noticed, when I say embed it, you just resize it within the post. And that's actually not the idea, especially in web development. So in this case, I went ahead. Now, I'm on a Mac, but PCs have this same ability to resize images. Okay, it's just not unique to Mac. Any device, and in this case, I used Google to download it. So I'm looking up at the browser, then I can actually go and look at that folder. And again, this is pretty standard across all operating systems. And then I can come over here and I'm like, yeah, that's the image. Now, this image is rather large. Now, how can I tell that? Well, for one thing, I can look at the kilobits, but if I double click in it, oh, actually, this is the one I already resized. So actually, let me do this, because I want to, let's go ahead and, all right, moved it trash. Okay, so I'm actually going to go to the image again and download it. Okay, so I'm downloading the image right now. There we go. So now when I go in here, and now notice how much bigger, 7.3. So this is a large image. So we, on the website, definitely do not want to add these size of images to our page. Now we do want to add images that are large enough to flex. That's something, or into scale, that's something you'll learn in the next class. But if I double click on here, and I bring this over, okay, here we go. Again, Your operating system most likely has. If not, you can find image editing stuff on the web. But one thing I talk about in here is first resizing and then file names. And I've been kind of harping this since the beginning, but I just think more exercises to do this are good. So what I would do here is under my tool, and I'm going to drop my background here so it kind of, so what I would do here is I'd go up into my tool and I would say adjust size. And what happens is, because the width and the height are linked, you can unlink them, but typically you wouldn't. I would change this to 500, and because it was square, it changed it relative, and notice how large it was and how large it is now. Even at 444 kilobits, it's not exactly optimized yet, but it's getting there from 7.1 kilobytes. So once I do that, then that's the image, right? And so then I would export it. In this case, I would give it, I would say something like my day, something like fun. Now, in the example, I use underscore as well, dashes and underscores for file names, no spaces, and all lowercase, however you want to do it. Now, in my example of on my Mac, it defaults to a PNG. You can also use a JPEG. We'll talk a little more about that. But typically, in these days, the PNG format is actually so flexible you can use it for both. But I could change it, right, to JPEG, right? So you can kind of see that a JPEG, and you can do the quality. But most of the time, and there's even definitely other file formats that are available for the web, but I would go ahead and save that. Now, in that case, one thing I didn't show here is when I exported it, I actually navigated to my public repo, okay? And in my public repo, we had created an image already where we've been embedding stuff, so that's where you would want to have that. Okay, I'm not going to save again. I just forgot to cover that. So now I'd bring up my VS Code. And because I've saved that in here now, notice I have in my public repo, I have two files that are untracked, right? So I'm just going to have version control them. Now, this is where navigating either way, I was going to do it the other way, but I typically like to do it this way, and then I could do the Git workflow from here. Okay, so I could, but I like to go here. Or I could do Git status, right? Yeah, I got a new image in there. I did delete another one. That's right. Okay, so Git add. So I staged them. So now we go from, again, this is a review, right? So now they're untracked to archived. Git commit, and I would say Gen AI images, because I believe that's the commit, and then I would do Git push. Okay. All right, so now let's come back over to into our discussion board, which is here. There we go. Okay, so there's a couple things. So what you're going to do here, and this is the part that I just did with you. Here's the file names you want to get. Resize, we already just did that. Something around 500, maintain your aspect ratio. That's what I was talking about. And then in your reply, I want you to tell us what prompts you use for a day, right? The exact prompt you use to create the two images, and then embed them directly. Do not attach, right? And then engage with, two classmates. So I'll just show you this because I know this can be, I'm going to go to 82. I'm going to go to my public repo. I'm going to go to my images, right? And I'm going to go, let's go to my fun day here. Right, there we go. Right click. Now this is how I like to do it, is copy image address, I believe, or do I open it in a new tab? I think I open it in a new tab and then I right click copy image address. I've done it both ways. I think Canvas gets a little picky sometimes. So let's do this, right? So in this case, because I know how to do images, I could absolutely come in here, right, and do image img, right, src equal. Now in this case, I would paste that in. Right, so that is the way, right? Now, I haven't done all of it, right? And this is where you start to learn about, okay, this is, and if I hit back to the, let's see, here it is, right? So then it shows up in there, but I could definitely do width and height. That would be good to do. Alt would be good to do, right? So this is where if you know how to code, it's great to do. If you're not sure of that, you can do user, no, of course, no user images. Let's see. Uploaded image. Yeah, so in uploaded images, you get the idea here. And now this is where it starts to make it a little easier for you. Rio's happy day. And then you could go back and look at it. Okay, attributes embedded. And now we could go actually look at what it created. So what did it add? It added an alt. It didn't add an image size. Right? And that's where I've seen where students will actually take a large image and just resize it this way. And that's not the idea, because the idea is actually, and this is true for web development as well. Okay, so I'm just giving you that. So what you want to do is have both your images in there. Give us a heading 3. Okay, so either above or below. Okay, so you're going to do a heading 3, right? And then my prompts. And then what you'll do, and notice how as soon as I hit enter, it changes from, and I knew I did that quick, but from a heading to a paragraph, and then there's your paragraph, and you can just list those out. And here's where you could also use, and this is where people who don't have HTML are actually not used to try not to use some of these, but we're just learning. So, but we already have learned how to write ULs, unordered list, ordered list, how to do LIs, right? So, you get to practice however you want here, but I can just tell you the more time you do it, the better. Okay, I'm not going to post that one. So let's do here. Embed, worth 50 points, reply to 2, comments on their images and or answers. Oh, did I give you the option? Wow, I gave you the option to reply. I think that's prompts. No, actually it's not. So respond to 2. I'll change this to classmates post on their images. Make sure in your reply you also add the answer to my question. And I hope you have a great week, and I'll talk to you soon.